I didn't ask him, didn't get a chance.
President Trump's arrived, y'all.
But I'm sure the president will interact a little bit with them before he gets in the motorcade.
It's going down.
Point out that we'll have Harley
wherever Trump at, you know it's something going down, y'all. Live, Air Force One pulling in.
Criticisms against Harley Davidson for planning to shift some of its production overseas. And you may hear it there in my microphone, but those are the engines of Air Force One. It's a very large plane if you've seen it in person.
In Milwaukee tonight.
So you can see it getting much closer to us right now.
It is one of the most impressive.
Right down the street from my house.
Citizen can see Air Force One, and by design too. It is meant to say, here we are a powerful country, and this is our traveling White House is what it is. Hey, you talked about Harley Davidson and the irony of the police escorts being on Harley Davidson. In North Dakota tonight, he talked about free trade and tariffs, but he did not mention Harley Davidson by name. At least I didn't hear it. Did you? And it comes after a day when his tweet was very critical, as you mentioned, about Harley's decision to put some production overseas.
Yeah, 3 days in a row now, the president has criticized Harley Davidson on Twitter, and so we were watching very closely that speech in North Dakota to see if he would do it in person. And he did not mention Harley Davidson, even though he defended his trade policy that Harley Davidson is citing as the reason that they're moving that production of motorcycles bound for European markets overseas. It'll be interesting again in the Foxconn groundbreaking tomorrow to see if the president mentions Harley. Of course, the two are separated only by about 30 miles up the freeway. Harley headquartered in downtown Milwaukee, or near downtown Milwaukee, and Foxconn in Mount Pleasant. So that'll be interesting to see if he makes it part of his speech, if he goes after Harley, or maybe he'll make nice with Harley. We'll see.
And if people are wondering where is the president aboard that thing, and I don't know who your photojournalist is, but if we could ask him to pan left, I can kind of point out where the president's quarters are on Air Force One. Maybe our photographer can't. Other nose in the plane, as we kind of try to peek-a-boo in the windows to see where he is. But underneath the cockpit is where the president quarters are. There's a small room in there, a small gym, a shower. It's quite a setup. Yeah, there he goes.
It is, and we're just waiting to get the stairs here.
Mm-hmm.
You see some of the off camera here. You see some of the traveling party. I imagine that might be White House staff. There they are. They are deplaning in the back of Air Force One. You see them with their suits on, and then we'll see the stairs pull up to the front of the plane, and that's for the president and perhaps some of the other maybe cabinet officials or others that are in his traveling party will deplane.
I believe we just saw the president's luggage, because there's no way that guy had that much luggage for 12 hours in Milwaukee.
Right, well, maybe he's planning to take home a few shirts or cheese heads, perhaps.
Unless he's related to Mary, he does not travel that much. And there is the one of the Air Force officials who will help the stairs dock with the airplane.
Really is massive. This place has 2 kitchens in its own medical facility, its own surgery room, essentially. It's got an operating table, according to the fact sheet here on Air Force One. It really is an airborne command center in every sense. It's just a regal-looking piece of equipment, obviously, but everything that you could possibly need is in there for short trips like the one he just made from North Dakota, or perhaps longer.
You mentioned how fast it flies, Mary. According to some reports, F-16 fighter planes escorting the president's plane on 9/11 had to ask the Air Force One pilot, Colonel Mark Tillman, to slow down. So when a fighter jet is telling you, could you slow down, that is an indication. There's nothing that the president could imaginally, that you can imagine the president would need that is not on board that impressive airplane. And I know, Theo, you've probably seen it a few times in your political coverage career here. I've seen it pull up once or twice in different locations, and it is just a jaw-dropper. So I can understand why there are scores of people out at the airport. Of course, as you mentioned, they're obviously supporters of the president, but just that scene alone is something to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And this may surprise you, Ted, but for how many presidential speeches I've covered, this is the first time I've been at the airport watching Air Force One
No kidding.
come in.
Okay.
It's quite a sight coming in front of you to see it land and then to come up here. You mentioned it. I mean, this is to make a statement that the leader of the free world is in your city, and quite an effective statement it is for presidents of both political parties.
And Theo, while we're kind of vamping here, give us a little bit of a sense of how you feel about what will happen tomorrow. Would it behoove the president to downplay the rift that he's got going with Harley, or really celebrate that Foxconn is coming, it is promising jobs? The state remains divided here. Well, is this his opportunity to spike the ball and say, I brought you this, it's going to create jobs? This will
There go the man of the hour.
Well, I don't mean to step on your question there, Mary, but there is the president. He has just walked through the doorway of Air Force One, and he is climbing down the 25 steps or so. And we'll see what he does there when he gets to the bottom. But he did wave to his supporters, and a big cheer came up from the supporters who are to my left. And they're all taking pictures. They've got their camera and their phones raised over their head, trying to get a picture of the president. There he is meeting with the two officials from the 128th. And instead of getting into the presidential limousine to start the motorcade, he is, as we expected, now walking over to his supporters, as well as the traveling press corps and a number of the White House officials. And the president, he is waving to his supporters. I'm walking over to see what he says to them. He's shaking some hands with his supporters. He's shaking a good number of hands. He commented as to the number of people who are out here this late at night. He's looking at his watch as if to make the point that the people have come out quite late, and thanking them. And taking some photos as well, as you might expect. And this may carry on. Of course, he is the president of the United States, so he gets to
Do what he want to do.
He gets to do this for as long as he chooses to, before he gets into the presidential motorcade and heads to the Pfister Hotel. You mentioned
were we told that this might happen? Were you given the heads up that he might greet with visitors?
No, I was not given the heads
Trump
up
in town, y'all. Like, share, subscribe.
I have not